Vorthak pressed his scaled palm against the cold metal wall, feeling the vibrations of the human ship's engines beneath his claws. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the heat signatures on his scanner. One human, female, cornered in the cargo bay like a rat in a trap. Perfect. The Keth'mori hunter had been tracking this particular specimen for 3 rotations across 4 different star systems. This human, this Captain Riley Stone, had somehow managed to destroy 2 of his hunting vessels and escape his nets not once, not twice, but 5 separate times. The audacity of this tiny, soft-skinned creature continued to astound him. Finally, he hissed through his razor-sharp teeth, savoring the moment. His mandibles clicked with anticipation. No more running for you, little prey. Vorthak had cornered countless species across the galaxy. He'd hunted the acid-spitting Morleks of Gamma Prime, captured the phase-shifting ethereals of the Void Belt, and even bagged a legendary storm titan from the Hurricane Worlds. But humans were supposed to be easy, weak, fragile. A Class D species barely worthy of sport. So why had this one particular human made his life so impossibly difficult? His comm device crackled. "Vorthak! Status report!" came the gravelly voice of his handler, Zixthul. "The hunt ends today," Vorthak replied, checking his plasma rifle's charge. "Target is trapped. No escape routes available." Good. The High Council grows impatient. They want this human delivered alive for questioning. Her tactics have been concerning. Concerning. That was putting it mildly. Captain Riley Stone had turned what should have been a simple capture mission into an absolute nightmare. She'd somehow figured out how to reverse the polarity on Keth'mori's stun weapons, turning them into explosive devices. She'd reprogrammed their hunter-seeker drones to attack their own ships. Most embarrassingly, she'd once convinced an entire pack of Vorthak's hunting companions that she was actually their commanding officer by speaking fluent Keth'mori military protocol. How in the 7 hells had a human learned their language that well? Vorthak shook his massive head, dismissing the thought. It didn't matter anymore. The chase was over. He stepped into the cargo bay, his 4 arms spread wide, each one gripping a different weapon. Plasma rifle, neural disruptor, energy nets, and his favorite. A particle whip that could slice through titanium like butter. The human wouldn't be escaping this time. The cargo bay was dimly lit, filled with supply crates and maintenance equipment. Perfect hunting ground. Plenty of places for prey to hide, but nowhere to actually escape. The only exit was behind him, sealed and guarded by his combat drones. "Human!" His voice boomed through the chamber. "Your pathetic flight ends here. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick." A soft laugh echoed from somewhere between the cargo containers. Not panicked, not frightened, amused. That was unexpected. "Oh, Vorthak," came a female voice, calm and almost conversational. Still making the same mistake after all this time. His blood temperature dropped several degrees. She knew his name. How did she know his name? "What mistake?" he growled, scanning the shadows with his thermal vision. "You assume I'm trapped in here with you?" the voice replied, and he could hear the smile in it. "When actually, big guy, you're trapped in here with me." Vorthak's mandibles twitched. Human arrogance never ceased to amaze him. "You have no weapons, human. My scanners show you carry only basic survival gear. This bravado will not save you." "Scanners, huh?" Another laugh. "Tell me, how's your left rear sensory array working?" Instinctively, Vorthak glanced at his equipment readings. His left rear sensory array showed normal function. Wait. The timestamp was wrong. The data was 3 hours old. A chill ran down his spine. Surprised? Riley's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once now. I've been watching you hunt for months, Vorthak. Learning your patterns, your equipment, your weaknesses. Impossible, he snarled. Humans lack the intelligence to comprehend Keth'mori technology. Oh, honey, she said, and there was definitely laughter in her voice now. You really haven't been paying attention, have you? The cargo bay lights suddenly flicked off, plunging them into darkness. Vorthak immediately switched to infrared vision, but saw nothing. No heat signature, no trace of the human. His hunter instincts screamed danger. Looking for me? Riley's voice came from directly behind him. Vorthak spun, firing his plasma rifle in a wide arc. The energy bolts lit up the chamber in brilliant blue flashes, but struck only empty air and cargo containers. Too slow, she called from somewhere above him now. He looked up just in time to see a small device drop from the ceiling. It hit the floor with a metallic clink, then began beeping rapidly. That would be a thermal damper, Riley explained helpfully. Borrowed the tech from your own ship's stealth systems. Amazing what you can accomplish when you actually read the manual. The device exploded in a flash of ice-cold energy. Vorthak's thermal vision instantly went haywire, flooded with false readings and temperature spikes. Now he was truly blind. You're probably wondering how a primitive human managed to reverse-engineer your technology, Riley continued, her voice echoing around the chamber like a ghost. The answer is pretty simple, actually. We're not as stupid as you think we are. Vorthak fired wildly, his plasma bolts lighting up the darkness. But each shot revealed nothing but empty space and scattered cargo. In fact, Riley went on, sounding completely unbothered by the energy weapon's fire, your entire species seems to suffer from the same fundamental misunderstanding about humans. You think we're weak because we're small. You think we're stupid because our technology is less advanced. You think we're helpless because we can't breathe in space without suits. Another device clattered across the floor. This one began emitting a high-pitched whine that made Vorthak's hearing receptors ache. But here's the thing about humans that you never bothered to learn, Riley said, her voice cutting through the painful audio static. We don't survive because we're the biggest, or the strongest, or the most advanced. We survive because we adapt. The whining device exploded in a burst of electromagnetic interference. Vorthak's weapon systems immediately began throwing error messages. His plasma rifle powered down with a defeated whimper. And boy, Riley continued cheerfully, have I adapted to you. Vorthak dropped his useless rifle and pulled out his particle whip, activating it with a vicious crack. The energy weapon cast dancing shadows across the walls as he swept it back and forth, trying to flush out his tormentor. Still hunting with the same old methods, Riley observed. Brute force, superior firepower, intimidation. It works great against most species, doesn't it? Most prey just freezes up when faced with a big, scary predator. The particle whip sliced through a cargo container, spilling its contents across the floor with a tremendous crash. But humans? Riley's voice was getting closer now. We've been prey for most of our evolutionary history. And you know what prey learns to do really, really well. Another container exploded as Vorthak's whip found its mark, but still no sign of the human. We learn to hide. We learn to run. We learn to think our way out of impossible situations. A pause. And sometimes, when we're backed into a corner with nowhere left to run, something small and metallic bounced off Vorthak's shoulder. He spun toward the source, raising his particle whip. We learn to bite back. The device that had struck him suddenly erupted in blinding light. Not just bright. This was military-grade photonic overload, designed to overwhelm optical sensors. Even with his eyes slammed shut, the radiance burned through Vorthak's eyelids like staring into a sun. He roared in pain and fury, lashing out with his whip in every direction. The energy weapon carved smoking gouges in the walls and floor, but found nothing solid. "Light's too bright for you?" Riley asked with mock sympathy. "Don't worry, it'll fade in a few minutes, assuming you live that long." "Enough!" Vorthak bellowed, his voice shaking the entire cargo bay. "Face me, coward! Fight me with honor!" "Honor?" Riley laughed, and this time there was something cold and dangerous in the sound. "You want to talk about honor? You've been hunting my species for sport for decades, capturing us, experimenting on us, turning us into trophies for your wall." Vorthak's vision was slowly returning, but everything was still a painful blur of shapes and shadows. "Your people have enslaved entire human colonies," Riley continued, her voice growing harder. "You've wiped out families, destroyed worlds, treated us like animals to be caged and studied." "We are the superior species," Vorthak snarled, swinging his whip at random targets. "It is the natural order." "Superior?" Riley's laughter was genuinely incredulous now. "Vorthak, you magnificent idiot! I've been leading you around by the nose for months, using nothing but scrap metal and basic chemistry. I turned your own equipment against you with technology my species mastered centuries ago. I've made you look like a complete amateur in front of your own people." The stinging truth of her words hit harder than any weapon could have. "And now," Riley said, her voice suddenly very close, "you're about to learn why humans have a saying about cornered animals." Vorthak spun toward the sound, his vision finally clearing enough to make out shapes in the darkness. There she was, a small figure, barely reaching his chest, standing just a few meters away. No weapons visible, no armor, just a human female in a simple flight suit, hands casually at her sides. She was smiling. "One more step," Riley Stone said pleasantly, "and you're mine." Vorthak stared at her in complete bewilderment. This tiny creature, this fragile mammal that he could crush with one hand, was threatening him? The absurdity of it would have made him laugh, if not for the growing realization that something was very, very wrong with this entire situation. "You're bluffing," he said, but even he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. Riley's smile widened. "Am I?" She raised her right hand, revealing a small device about the size of her palm. It looked completely innocuous, just a simple metal cylinder with a few blinking lights. "Do you know what this is, Vorthak?" He studied the device, running it through his mental catalog of human technology. It didn't match any known human weapons or tools. Some kind of communicator, he guessed. "Close," Riley said. "It's a detonator." Vorthak's blood ran cold. "Detonator for what?" Instead of answering, Riley gestured around the cargo bay with her free hand. "You know, for someone who's supposed to be a master hunter, you really don't pay much attention to your environment." For the first time since entering the chamber, Vorthak actually looked at his surroundings. Really looked. The cargo containers he'd been carelessly destroying with his energy weapons, they weren't filled with supplies and equipment like he'd assumed. They were filled with strange, crystalline formations that glowed with an eerie inner light. His enhanced vision suddenly identified the substance, and his 4 hearts nearly stopped beating. "Trilithium crystals," he whispered in horror. "Enough to blow this entire section of space into subatomic particles," Riley confirmed cheerfully. I've been moving them into position for the past 3 hours, while you were busy tracking false heat signatures through the ship." Vorthak stared at the glowing crystals surrounding them. Trilithium was one of the most unstable explosive compounds in the galaxy. Even a tiny fragment could level a building. There had to be tons of it packed into these containers. "You're insane," he breathed. "If you detonate that, we'll both die." Riley shrugged. "Yeah, probably. But here's the thing, Vorthak. You've been hunting my people for so long that you've forgotten something important about us." "What?" Her smile never wavered. "When you back a human into a corner, when you threaten everything they care about, when you give them no choice between surrender and death." She held up the detonator, her thumb hovering over the activation switch. "We tend to choose, 'Take the bastard with us.'" Vorthak found himself taking an involuntary step backward. This was impossible. Prey animals didn't behave this way. They were supposed to run, or freeze, or beg for mercy. They weren't supposed to smile and threaten mutual destruction. "You're bluffing," he said again, but with even less conviction than before. "Maybe," Riley admitted. "Or maybe I'm the kind of crazy human who steals a cargo ship full of military-grade explosives just to turn the tables on an alien hunter who's been making her life difficult." She tilted her head, studying his face with obvious amusement. "Tell me, Vorthak, are you feeling lucky?" The Keth'mori hunter, veteran of 1,000 successful captures, master of the galactic hunting guilds, found himself in a position he'd never experienced before in his long life. He was terrified. Not just of death. Death was a risk he'd accepted long ago when he chose the hunter's path. He was terrified of the realization that everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. They weren't weak prey animals to be easily captured and caged. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors willing to do absolutely anything to stay free. "What do you want?" he asked, hating how small his voice sounded. Riley's smile became positively radiant. "Oh, now that's a much better question. I want a lot of things, actually. I want you to stop hunting my people. I want safe passage out of this system. I want your ship's navigation data so I can warn other human colonies about your hunting routes." She paused, tapping the detonator thoughtfully against her chin. "But mostly, I want you to carry a message back to your High Council." "What message?" "Tell them the hunt is over," Riley said, her voice suddenly deadly serious. "Tell them that if they want to keep treating humans like animals, they need to remember that some animals bite back. And tell them that the next hunter who comes looking for sport in human space might find that the game has rules they never learned to play." Vorthak stared at her, his mind racing through his options. He could try to rush her, but if she really did have a detonator for those trilithium crystals, they'd both be vaporized before he took 2 steps. He could try to call for backup, but his communications were still scrambled from her electromagnetic pulse device. Or he could listen to what this impossible human was offering. "If I agree to your terms," he said carefully, "you'll let me leave." "I'll let you live," Riley corrected. "Your ship, your weapons, your hunting gear, those stay here. You can take a life pod back to Keth'mori space and deliver my message. Consider it a professional courtesy." The humiliation of returning home empty-handed, stripped of his equipment, defeated by a single human, would destroy his reputation forever. But the alternative was death, and dead hunters delivered no messages at all. "You have a deal," he said through gritted teeth. Riley's smile returned. "Smart choice. I was really hoping you'd say that." "Why?" "Because if you'd chosen to rush me instead, I would have had to explain to you that this isn't actually a detonator," she said, waggling the device playfully. "It's just an old communicator with some blinking lights glued on." Vorthak's mandibles fell open in shock. "What?" "The trilithium crystals are real, though," Riley added, "but they're perfectly stable as long as nobody shoots them with a plasma rifle or cuts them with a particle whip. Which, by the way, you came dangerously close to doing several times." She tucked the fake detonator into her belt and pulled out an actual weapon. A simple, human-made projectile pistol that probably couldn't penetrate his hide at this range. "The beauty of a good bluff," she explained conversationally, "is that the mark does most of the work themselves. I just had to create a scenario where your own assumptions would trap you." Vorthak stared at her in complete disbelief. She'd defeated him without firing a shot, without using a single advanced weapon, without even having a real plan to blow them both up. She'd simply convinced him that she was crazy enough to do it. "How?" he whispered. Riley's expression turned serious. "Because you never bothered to understand what you were hunting. You saw humans as weak, primitive, helpless. But we've been fighting battles we couldn't win our entire evolutionary history. We've learned to make up for being small and weak, and outnumbered by being smart, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless when we need to be." She gestured around the cargo bay full of explosive crystals. "This whole setup? The thermal dampers, the EM pulse devices, the photonic overload? I built all of it from spare parts and salvage, using principles any first-year human engineering student would understand. But it worked because you never imagined that your primitive prey might actually be intelligent enough to turn your own assumptions against you." Vorthak felt something he'd never experienced before: respect for his quarry. This small human female had outthought, outmaneuvered, and ultimately defeated him using nothing but cleverness and an absolute refusal to give up. It was simultaneously humiliating and impressive. "The life pod is in docking bay 3, Riley said, stepping aside to give him a clear path to the exit. "Try not to get lost on your way there. I've already programmed it with coordinates for Keth'mori space." Vorthak hesitated at the doorway. "Why let me live? Your people would call this justice, a hunter becoming the hunted." Riley considered the question seriously. "Because someone needs to warn your people that the easy prey they've been picking on for decades is about to start hunting back. And because killing you wouldn't bring back all the humans your people have captured and killed." She met his eyes directly, and he saw something there that made his blood run cold. "But mostly because I want your High Council to know exactly what happened here today. I want them to know that a single human, with no advanced weapons and no backup, defeated one of their best hunters using nothing but her brain and some spare parts." Riley's smile returned, but this time there was something predatory about it. "I want them to be afraid." 3 standard rotations later, High Commander Thexvar of the Keth'mori Hunting Council received the most humiliating report in the organization's 1,000-year history. Vorthak, stripped of rank and equipment, stood before the assembled council members like a molting lizard, pathetic, exposed, and utterly defeated. "Let me understand this correctly," Thexvar said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You, a master hunter with over 200 confirmed captures, were bested by a single human female using spare parts?" "Yes, High Commander," Vorthak replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "And she demanded that you deliver a message threatening our entire hunting operation?" "She did." Council member Zix Thul leaned forward, his bioluminescent scales flashing angry crimson. "This is preposterous. Humans are Class D prey. They barely qualify as sentient. With respect, Council Member, Vorthak said carefully, our classification system may need revision. The council chamber erupted in hisses and clicking mandibles. The very suggestion that their prey classifications might be wrong was tantamount to heresy. Silence! Thexvar's roar echoed through the chamber. You dare question millennia of proven science because one lucky human caught you off guard? Vorthak straightened his spine, finding his voice. It wasn't luck, High Commander. She had been studying us for months. She knew our equipment, our tactics, our weaknesses. She played me like a hatchling with its first hunt. Impossible, snarled Council Member Krextool. Human brains lack the neural complexity for such planning. Then explain how she reverse-engineered our stealth technology using primitive tools, Vorthak shot back. Explain how she spoke fluent Keth'mori military protocol. Explain how she anticipated every move I made. The council fell, silent. These were uncomfortable questions with no easy answers. Thexvar's comm unit chimed softly. He glanced at it. Then his expression changed from annoyed to concerned. We're receiving multiple reports from hunting parties across human space. Sector 7 reports 3 ships destroyed by impossible human tactics. Sector 12 lost an entire pack to what they describe as coordinated human resistance. Sector 9... He paused, reading the display with growing alarm. Sector 9 reports that humans are actively hunting our scouts. The chamber fell deathly quiet. In the entire history of the Keth'mori hunting guilds, prey had never turned predator. This is clearly coordinated, Thexvar continued, his voice tight with tension. The human designated Captain Riley Stone appears to have shared her methods with other human military leaders. They're adapting her tactics across multiple systems. Zixthul's scales flashed from crimson to deep purple, the color of fear. How many ships have we lost? 17 confirmed destroyed, 23 missing and presumed captured, and the numbers are climbing daily. Council Member Vrexnal, eldest of the assembled hunters, spoke for the first time. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries. In my 700 years of hunting, I have seen many species fight back. The Morleks poisoned our water supplies. The Storm Titans used weather manipulation. The Ethereals tried phase shifting. He paused, his milky white eyes focusing on some distant memory. But never have I seen prey that learned to think like predators. What do you suggest, Elder? Thexvar asked respectfully. I suggest we stop treating this like a hunting problem and start treating it like a war. The word war hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Keth'mori were hunters, not warriors. They specialized in capturing isolated prey, not fighting organized resistance. Surely you're not suggesting we abandon human space entirely, Krextool protested. The High Council has invested enormous resources in our hunting operations. Vrexnal's laugh was like grinding stone. Young fool, the humans have already made that decision for us. The question now is whether we adapt or die. Thexvar's comm unit chimed again. This time, his scales went completely pale. What is it? Vorthak asked. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive human fleet approaching the outer perimeter of Keth'mori space. Thexvar's voice was barely controlled panic. 300 ships, military configuration, and they're broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Put it through, Vrexnal commanded. The chamber's main display activated, showing the face of a human female, but not Captain Riley Stone. This was someone else entirely. Older, with short gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. Her uniform bore markings that even the Keth'mori recognized. Admiral of the Fleet. "I am Admiral Marcus Webb, of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am addressing the leadership of the Keth'mori Hunting Council." The council members exchanged nervous glances. How did humans even know about the council's existence, let alone their location? "For the past 50 years, Admiral Webb continued, your people have treated human space as your personal hunting preserve. You've captured our citizens, destroyed our colonies, and treated us as nothing more than animals for your entertainment." Her expression never changed, but something cold and dangerous flickered in her eyes. "That ends now." Keth'mori found his voice. "Computer, open return channel." "Admiral Webb," he said, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "I am High Commander Keth'mori. Perhaps we can reach some accommodation." "No," Webb interrupted. "There will be no accommodation, no negotiation, no compromise. You had your chance for diplomacy when Captain Stone offered to let your hunter return home with a warning." The display shifted to show tactical readouts of the approaching human fleet. The numbers were staggering. "Instead, your response was to increase hunting activities in human space," Webb continued. "You interpreted mercy as weakness. That was your mistake." Keth'mori stepped forward aggressively. "Human! You dare threaten the Keth'mori in our own territory? We have hunted and conquered 1,000 worlds." Admiral Webb's smile was thin and utterly without warmth. "Yes, we know. We've spent the last 3 months studying your tactics, your technology, your hunting grounds. We've interviewed every human survivor of your captures. We've analyzed every piece of wreckage from your attacks." The display changed again, showing detailed schematics of Keth'mori ships, weapons, and equipment. "We know your strengths. More importantly, we know your weaknesses. And we've designed very specific countermeasures for both." Vorthak stepped closer to the display, studying the human fleet formation. Something about it nagged at him. "Those aren't standard human military vessels," he said suddenly. Admiral Webb nodded approvingly. "Very observant. No, they're not. After Captain Stone's encounter with your hunter, we realized that fighting you with conventional tactics would be like fighting fire with fire. Inefficient." The display zoomed in on individual ships. They were sleek, predatory-looking vessels that seemed to incorporate design elements from multiple species. "So we built these instead. Stealth ships using modified Keth'mori technology. Weapons systems based on your own hunting gear, but scaled up for fleet combat. Sensor arrays that can track your ships through hyperspace." Webb's smile widened slightly. "We learned from the best predators in the galaxy. Now we're going to show you what happens when prey evolves." Elder Vrexnel wheezed what might have been laughter. "Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. They're not just fighting back. They're becoming us." "Becoming us?" Keth'mori asked in confusion. "Don't you see?" the ancient hunter replied. "They studied our methods so thoroughly that they've turned themselves into perfect counter-hunters. They know exactly how we think, how we move, how we strike. And now they're using that knowledge to hunt us." On the display, Admiral Webb was still speaking. "Your hunter carries a message from Captain Stone. Allow me to deliver one in return." The image shifted to show the approaching fleet in attack formation, weapons powered and ready. The hunting season is over. Any Keth'mori vessel found in human space after this transmission ends will be considered a hostile target and destroyed without warning. Any hunting station, supply depot, or staging area supporting operations against human targets will be eliminated. She paused, letting the words sink in. We are not your prey anymore. We are your replacement. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Finally, Zixthul spoke. This is impossible. Humans lack the stomach for true warfare. They're too soft, too emotional. Are they? Brexnell asked quietly. Tell me, council member, what did we do to their colonies? To their families? To their children? Zixthul's scales flickered uncertainly. We hunted them, as is our right. And now they're hunting us back, with the same ruthless efficiency we showed them. The ancient hunter's voice carried a note of grim admiration. They learned from us, young one. Every technique, every trick, every advantage we used against them. And now, they're going to use it all against us. Keth'mori slumped in his command chair. What are your orders, High Commander? Vorthak asked. For a long moment, the leader of the hunting council said nothing. Then, slowly, he began entering commands into his console. I'm issuing a general recall, he said finally. All hunting vessels in human space are to return to Keth'mori territory immediately. High Commander, Krextul protested. You cannot seriously be considering surrender to these primitives. Primitives? Keth'mori's laugh was bitter. Council member, they outthought our best hunter, reverse-engineered our most advanced technology, and built a fleet specifically designed to counter our every advantage. In less than 3 months. He stood up, his full height casting a shadow across the chamber. If that's primitive, then what does that make us? The question hung in the air as emergency alarms began sounding throughout the station. Long-range sensors showed the human fleet had crossed into Keth'mori space and was approaching at attack speed. High Commander, the communications officer called out, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. This time, the face on the screen was Captain Riley Stone herself. She looked exactly as she had in Vorthak's cargo bay, small, seemingly fragile, and wearing that same dangerous smile. Hello again, Vorthak, she said pleasantly. I hope you delivered my message. Vorthak stepped forward. I did, Captain Stone. The High Council has ordered a full withdrawal from human space. Good. That's a start, but I'm afraid it's not quite enough. Riley's expression turned serious. You see, we've done some investigating since our little chat. We found your prison ships. We found the experimental facilities. We found the colonies you wiped out just for sport. Her voice grew cold as winter vacuum. And we found the breeding programs. Every Keth'mori in the chamber went dead silent. The breeding programs were their most classified operations, attempts to create more compliant human stock for hunting purposes. So, here's what's going to happen, Riley continued. You're going to release every human in your custody, all of them, no exceptions. You're going to provide medical care for the ones you experimented on. You're going to give us the locations of every mass grave, every destroyed colony, every crime scene. She leaned forward, her eyes boring through the screen. And then you're going to help us hunt down every other species in this galaxy that thinks humans make good prey. Keth'mori found his voice. And if we refuse? Riley's smile returned, but there was nothing pleasant about it this time. Then you get to find out why human military doctrine includes something called total war. The screen changed to show detailed scans of the Keth'mori home system. Every planet, every space station, every orbital facility was highlighted and tagged. We know where you live, Riley said simply. We know where your families are. We know which worlds are military targets and which are civilian. And unlike you, we actually care about the difference. She paused, letting the implications sink in. But if you force us to come to your home systems, if you make us fight a war of extermination instead of accepting justice, well, you taught us to be very good at hunting. I wonder how good we'd be at it on an industrial scale. Elder Vrexnel spoke up. What guarantees do we have that you'll honor any agreement we make? The same guarantee you gave all the species you hunted, Riley replied. Our word. The difference is, humans actually keep theirs. Keth'mori looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. He saw fear, anger, and slowly dawning realization. The age of Keth'mori dominance was over. The prey had not just fought back, they had evolved into apex predators. We accept your terms, he said quietly. Riley nodded. Smart choice. You have 72 standard hours to begin prisoner transfers. My people will provide coordinates and schedules. The transmission began to fade, then sharpened again as Riley added one final thought. Oh, and Vorthak? Thank you. For what? He asked, genuinely confused. For teaching me that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't the biggest predator or the most advanced technology. Riley's smile was genuinely warm now. It's an intelligent species that refuses to stay prey. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Elder Vrexnel began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and built to a full, booming roar that echoed through the chamber. What's so funny? Krextul demanded. Don't you see? The ancient hunter gasped between laughs. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. We wanted to create the perfect prey. Challenging, intelligent, adaptable. And we did. His laughter grew even louder. We just forgot that the perfect prey might one day become the perfect predator. Outside the station's viewports, the human fleet maintained its attack formation, weapons ready, waiting for compliance with their demands. 300 ships carrying the message that the galaxy's power structure had fundamentally changed. The hunters had become the hunted. And somewhere in that fleet, Captain Riley Stone was probably still smiling.